one hand, the Federal Reserve attempts to gauge if the supply chain snarls in the US are temporary and localized, or patterns that are set to fuel inflation. On the other, the Institute of Supply Management said in its report a week ahead of the US government's job report that manufacturing growth has cooled even as supply chain issues persist. The labour shortage, inflation and wait time of materials have made the US, UK and the EU think upon the late 70s and early 80s, the time of the oil crisis and economic recession. As business grows stronger, supply chain issues continue to worsen. This is Procurement Shorts, where you can get your daily dose of news on what's impacting the world of procurement and the supply chain. Let's start here. The Federal Reserve, a central bank of the US, was founded by President Woodrow Wilson in 1913 after the financial crisis of 1907 to avoid financial disruptions by acting as a last resort lender. In its report of the economy, it has directly mentioned and alluded to shortages over 70 times. Such a frequency of mentions of shortage in its beige book was last seen in the 70s during the oil crisis. The report tentatively takes the stance that supply chain constraints may abate, thereby bringing inflation closer to the previously forecasted 2%, but the Fed will need to wait out the holiday season to test their outlook. Meanwhile, over half of the respondents of their survey had pursued new suppliers, and over 30% had changed their services or products. This is in line with the global trend of business owners, CPOs and CEOs who have begun to eschew offshoring and outsourcing to gain more control over the supply chain. The supply chain disruptions across the globe, specifically labour shortages, longer wait times and shipping bottlenecks, have led business leaders to rethink the value of just-in-time strategy and offshoring to distant geographies via ocean transportation. Benetton, the Italian apparel company, has begun to boost manufacturing in Serbia, Croatia, Egypt, Tunisia and Turkey. Over 58% of the manufacturing is currently based out of factories in Asia, such as Thailand, which offer low-cost supplies. Some companies have decided to build their own manufacturing facilities, like Pult Group, a home builder. Others have acquired locations closer to local raw material suppliers just to mitigate issues associated with the supply chain. Majestic Steel USA, which processes and distributes flat-rolled steel, is set to build a 515,000 square foot facility on the grounds of a Nucor Corporation steel mill in Arkansas. Massimo Renon, chief executive of Benetton, plans to cut travel time from several weeks to less than a week, thanks to the shift in manufacturing centres over the next 12 to 16 months. The shift will also cut transportation costs and make it easier to inspect the manufacturing sites, allowing more control over the supply chain. Now, control over the supply chain feels like a basic requirement under the current circumstances, but it has been overlooked in general the past 2 decades as cost efficiency took center stage. By 2010, manufacturing jobs in the US had declined from a stable 17 million to below 12 million. A 2008 survey conducted in the UK mentions that over a fifth of UK manufacturers had offshored production to replace UK capacity, with another fifth planning to do so, and more than half were set to create offshore plants. Low-wage, low-cost producers based mainly in Asia had taken over the world's manufacturing. Over time, the supply chain grew more and more complex, with an ever-keen eye on finding the cheapest source for the specifications. For example, the iPhone that you hold, while assembled in China, is actually sourced from over 43 countries. With the average wait time for raw materials at an all-time high of 96 days and the continuing global scramble for shipping containers and other disruptions, companies are now training their sites closer to home, both as a firefighting measure and as long-term strategy. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, which accounts for over 24% of the chips manufactured around the world and for over 90% of advanced chips, has begun setting up a $12 billion, 2.5 million acre fab in the middle of the Arizona desert. This is part of the Biden administration's bid to bring back semiconductor manufacturing to the United States.